Good morning. Welcome back to Morning Prime. Now let's now talk about gender issues. Last year, President Uhuru Kenyatta signed into law a bill that will see secret lovers get locked out of their partner's wealth in case of death. That law seeks to streamline succession matters after concerns were raised that long lists of dependents sow confusion once the head of the family died. Succession challenges don't stop at secret lovers alone. And that is what we want to tackle this morning. What does the law say? How are the next of kin affected? We will be getting those answers today. Thank you very much for joining us here on Morning Prime. I am Ashley Mazuri. Let's meet our guests. We will be having Dr. Susan Gitau, who is a counseling psychologist. We'll equally have Manwa Hosea, who's an advocate of the High Court, and we'll have Hilda Odhiambo, also known to many as Hilda Raburu, who is a victim of succession challenges, and she will be telling us about her challenges, and maybe we'll be getting answers from Wakili. Well, let's get started now, and I'll start with you, Wakili Manwa Hosea. Most of the times when someone dies, and recently this has been happening so many times, you see a secret lover getting a court order stopping the burial process. What is your first reaction to this before we get into the nitty-gritties of the situation?
Well, thank you so much for having me. First, the issues with regard to succession are emotional issues in Kenya. Historically, once an individual dies, there happens to be a resurgence of individuals purporting to be dependents to the estate of the deceased. So it's been a problem for the longest time, to the extent of the amendments that were made by His Excellency the President for purposes of ensuring that at least individuals who are masquerading as dependents or are opportunists into the estate of the deceased are not involved in the succession process of a deceased person. And therefore, the amendments were a welcome move, and they were intended to cure that problem, which has been in existence for a long time. The amendment essentially excluded individuals purporting to be wives or spouses of the deceased and who are not available to the deceased at the time of death. And therefore, I think generally the amendments have brought some level of sanity, and also we have had prominent cases which have set pace for purposes of ensuring that individuals who are not dependents to the estate of the deceased do not benefit. Okay, coming to you, Dr. Gitau, from what Wakili has said, and even looking at the situations that we've been seeing and hearing about on the ground, it is so bad and traumatizing for the family that most of the times we're even seeing families nowadays bury their kin as early as 5 a.m. to avoid the drama. Talk to us about that from a counseling point of view.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, because what Hosea is saying is linking to what we have been seeing even in our therapy rooms. It's very traumatic to realize that maybe your father had wealth that he had accumulated with your mom, or even with you, especially for the adult children. And at the end of the day, you cannot inherit that, because these inheritance issues can also come from relatives. When we talk about those secret relationships, I think it's time we mature down and accept what is going on. Because for me, I have always said, even the cases I always get in my room, that why are we pretending? If you have these children, you have them. And the fact that the president of this nation passed that law, it is like you've been given a license to go into the open. And I know it's very difficult, especially when one spouse discovers that you've been having a secret family, you even have children, and probably even the people that you have put on the side, they have been actually feeding on the wealth that you have accumulated with your wife. I know it is, and I'm speaking to the wives because they're the ones who actually suffer most, who have gone through this. It is doable to actually think through when you're sober. you become a very, very rational person. You look at those children, for example, because I will never bow down when it comes to me talking about children. No child should ever suffer in this nation or anywhere in this world because somebody brought them to this world and they're supposed to give them their basic needs. So no child should actually lack education. No child should lack medical services. No child should actually lack a shelter. Okay. And so what I say is that it's very difficult. But let me also mention about insurance. There are times, like my father got mental illness, and I think he used to have very many covers for us. But the fact that maybe somebody's spouse is not educated, that does not give a ground, even for the insurance companies, to deny the children of that deceased person whatever is rightfully theirs.
Okay. Coming back to you, Akili, she's mentioned a very important thing, which is about the children. Most secret lovers, or, you know, side wives, if you want to call them, have children of the deceased. What happens? What does the law say about that?
I think the law is clear with regard to children. The Law of Succession Act, Cap 160, provides that any child, whether born in or out of wedlock, has the rights of any other child and the benefits that accrue thereto under the Law of Succession Act and the Children's Act. These rights are inherent. Even the Constitution provides that the best interest of the child has to be looked into in all manner of arrangements in terms of marriages. Whether you have a child within the wedlock or outside the wedlock, you have an obligation as a parent to ensure that that child is provided for, their needs are met. This is with regard to the right to education, the right to proper housing, clothing and all that, the basic necessities that come as a benefit to a child. And therefore, whether the deceased died and children came out who he sired, he or she, depending on whether it's the mother or the father, they have a responsibility to ensure that they take care of this, of that child. And therefore, I think any arrangement in terms of marriages, whether individuals who are married or not, as long as they sired a child, that child has a right to be taken care of by the said parent from the time of birth up to the time they acquire maturity. And therefore, I think our laws have protected those rights, regardless of the position the parents take, whether the deceased died and the marriage did not, or rather the spouse who was married to the deceased did not know that the deceased had several other children. The law requires that those children have those rights and they have to benefit from the estate of the deceased. Okay. I think that there is an exception when it comes to the rights of children in all succession laws to ensure that their best interest is put in front.
Okay. Before we even talk to Hilda so that she can share her story, Dr. Gitau, coming back to you, polygamy is allowed in our society, and many would argue, so then why would you have a secret lover in secret, yet you can come up in the open and just say, this is so and so, I want her to be my second wife or my third wife. Talk to us about that. What are people saying when they come seeing you?
Well, one of the things I have realized is that even the ones who come in, I think the society has been socialized that it's one man, one woman, one husband, one wife, such that even in their psychology, and especially women, it's very difficult to really accept that there's another woman that I'm sharing my man with. And I think this is a time I'm very happy with the Wakilis and people who can reason even in this nation, that there are things that are inevitable. And one mistake we made, we lost our identity the minute we embraced maybe cultural values, cultural beliefs, traditions and practices that were basically not our own as Africans. And so we are actually facing the consequences of choices we made. Because when I look at very many things in my in my work, including very dear people that I know are men and women of God, things have happened in their families that it's a fact that this person has been having this woman for the last 10 years or 15 or even 20, and actually these children really look like this person. And we also have women also who have sired children with many men. Anyway, women, that's for you also to face. But what I know is, if women can start seeing the truth in this matter, these fields that we find after somebody dies, or where we are having people killing one another, you can sit down. And men, it's your time. Sometimes the men I have told, why should you keep hiding this? So long as there is an opportunity for you to tell your wife, and then you can agree. And there are even people who get married, they are kept on the side, and they are like, no, you promised me we're gonna be two. So men, when you continue hiding, when you continue lying, you're making it worse. And even when you die, I tell men, it's gonna be the loudest sound or your voice after you die. Why? You cannot wake up to tell that Mercy, keep quiet, or that Zahara, keep quiet. They are going to talk. They are going to come out because their promises used to make them for them. Their promises used to make for their children. And the men also, Hosea, you may touch on this. I don't know what the law says. There are also men who marry women when they have children. And these children, they know this is my father. And they grow up knowing this is my father. But at some point, when things go haywire, these men saying, I'm only taking care of the children that I have biologically sired. And I don't know at what point, when somebody lives with somebody's child and you accepted that they are own children, that they also have legal rights to inheritance. Because it's also very sad, because such women feel shortchanged. They feel stigmatized. They feel, anyway, it's true, this man is not the biological father of my child. What do I do? So we need to have a conversation as an African community and ask ourselves, even if we lost our identity somewhere along the way, what do we do now? And I believe the law is the way. And on the other hand, I want to appeal to people, and especially adult children. When I talk adult children, it's like Susan here at my age, and my father maybe is very wealthy, and I'm looking up to the time my father is going to die for us to fight over our wealth. I think it's also the high time that children are also taught to look for their own wealth, such that you don't go dying fighting for your father's wealth, or even killing the parents because you want this inheritance, or even these wives, if you know they are there. And you know the fact remains that it's the women know. And let the men know today that women know so and so is there. When they don't know, you can get it when they discover, because they get sick. And some, it can be very fast to a point of death. I want to tell men and women who discover that there are these relationships outside, that does not give you a license to die. Okay, that gives you a license to look at life differently.
All right, Dr. Gitau, you've talked about a number of things that we'll get back into, but I just want us to give Hilda an opportunity to share her story. She's joining us live from our Kisumu studios. Hilda, habari ya asubuhi. Asante sana kwa kujiunga nasi hapa katika KTN News. Labda weza tuelezea kisa chako kilikuwa vipi?
Okay, mzuri sana. But kisa yangu kulingana na hiyo topic mko nayo.
Yes.
Mimi nilikuwa bibi wa 5. Na sikupata mtu kwa hiyo nyumba. Nao nikaishi hizo miaka zote bila kusumbuliwa na mwanamke wowote. And according to me, nilikuwa nikiona my husband had a right ya kuwarudisha, na sababu hakuwarudisha sikujua. Yes.
Na baada alipofariki nini kilitendeka?
Kabla afariki, my brothers-in-laws walijaribu kuwatafuta, but one of them managed na akakuja kama mzee yuko. But mzee akamwambia already ameoa, hataki chaos kwa familia. Yes.
Na sasa baada ya mzee kufariki, wakati wa kugawanya mali, Ilikuwa ni sawasawa, mambo yalienda kawaida ama ulipata changamoto?
Changamoto nilipata kidogo tu. Kwa sababu local administrator alikuwa amejua vile kunaendelea. Nilipoanza kufuatilia, nikienda kwa DCs and whoever,
yes,
I was taught, nikiambiwa hao wa mama wengine wakue. But luckily enough, nilikuwa na marriage certificate, ndio iliniokoa.
Na ulipata mali yako saizi tukiongea? Ulipata mali ama bado uko na changamoto zenye unapitia?
Ukweli lioko ni mimi aliniandika, lakini sijazipata, zile zimeegemea serikali. Yes.
Unaambiwa shida iko wapi? Ukienda kutafuta labda unaambiwa hapa changamoto iko hapa ama changamoto iko pale, ama hauelezewi kabisa?
Ukianzia unaanzia administration letter from the chief, later you go to the DO, utakuja kwa DC. Hizo mabarua zote nilipata. Nikazipeleka Bima House. That was 2020. Up to now sijapata chochote wala answer. Hata kile ninaweza sema kufuatilia sijui.
Okay. Sawa Hilda, nitarudi kwako. Coming back to you, Manuel. Of course, you've heard from her, you've heard from Hilda, you've heard her story. And she's raised the issue of wills in Kenya, of course. I want us to talk about that. What is the place of wills in the country? Is it acceptable? Are we embracing it as a nation? Manuel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Now I can.
On the issue of wills, it's a matter of the law. The Succession Act, Cap 160, provides two forms of succession processes. There is what we call intestate and testate successions. Intestate succession is where a person dies without a will in place. And testate succession is where a person dies while there is a will in place. This is someone who planned his death, ensured that before he dies, he has put his properties or her properties in place. He has ensured who gets what, so that now the work of the court, the family court, is to ensure that the will of the deceased is honored, the wishes of the deceased are followed as per that will. If you look at the current system in our society today, you will notice that majority of people who pass on do not take initiative to ensure that they have a written will. A majority of deaths, you will find individuals have not bothered to write a will. What does that mean? It means that you leave the responsibility of distributing your estate to a court of law. The court will take into consideration what should have gone to who. Under the Succession Act, section Caps 160, section 29 provides for the hierarchy of beneficiaries. The first is the wife and children, your wife and children, followed by your parents, your siblings, and like that. Up to the enactment of the Succession Act Amendment 2021, which actually essentially amended Section 3 of the Succession Act that provided for a definition of a spouse to mean a wife or a former wife. The essence was to remove former wives and spouses from the act to benefit from your estate for reason that it has caused a lot of trauma to families where a former wife, a former spouse, or what we prominently refer to mpango wa kando, appearing when you've died to seek to benefit from your estate. That was the essence of the amendment, which the president has sent it into law, that now gave a new definition of a spouse to mean your wife. Okay. And that is it. You have to ensure that you are married. Under the marriage, I heard Hilda mention about her having a marriage certificate.
Yes.
The law is very clear. There was an amendment in 2012 to the Marriage Act, which was to the effect that any person who purports to be married, either through African customary law, what we refer to the traditional marriages, or Christian law, Hindu, or whichever denomination, they have to have their marriage registered under the Marriages Act. And that amendment was to the effect that if you're married and you have 5 wives under the African customary law, our culture, you are allowed to marry up to whatever number of wives. If you have 5 wives who are married to you, then you have to ensure that those 5 wives are registered, have a marriage certificate showing that you're married. I see Susan smiling, but this is the law. The law has changed to the effect that you cannot come to court and say you're married to so-and-so and you don't have a marriage certificate. Nobody will listen to you. And I think she did the best thing to ensure that she's married, she has a title to the documents, to that marriage. That will assist her in ensuring that she gets what she deserves under the succession law.
All right, Manuel, that's a really good place to just take a short break. When we come back, of course, we'll be having a look and continuing with this conversation. But mostly, we'll be getting to know what exactly does one gain or lose when they get married. Of course, we'll be getting to that conversation shortly. So keep it KTN News.